Hello again, grade 10s. Mr. Matisse here. Today you're going to be writing a practice task in preparation for the literacy test on March 26th, and we're going to focus on short answer questions. Before we get into some of the questions, I want to just talk to you a little bit about our goals for today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the kinds of things you should bring to the test on March 26th, and then I want to review the kinds of questions that you're going to see. And you should remember some of them from when you did the practice test in September. And then we'll go over the Answer, Proof, Explain, the APE strategy as a means to help you answer those short answer questions. Okay, here's a little slide to talk about some of the things that you might want to bring to the test. Actually, it'd be wise for you to bring. Obviously, bring yourself to your assigned room, and your Period 1 teacher will get that information as the test approaches. A pencil and eraser, maybe an extra pencil or pen, blue or black ink. It's allowed, but it's really advised that you use a pencil, just in the event that you need to correct some mistakes. It's a little bit easier and things like that. I'd advise you to bring a highlighter. This is a great tool to use anytime you read, really, but on the literacy test itself, you can highlight, underline anything that you read, and it won't be marked or anything like that. Those are the kinds of strategies I want you to use to help yourself be successful. Then bring a book and magazine to read if you finish early, and no cell phones. You will not have access to any digital device, so it's important that you bring something to occupy yourself in case you finish early. So I want to take a second now to just kind of outline for you how the test is weighted. You can see that this circle graph really demonstrates to you how the test is balanced. The multiple choice questions on the right there are 39 multiple choice questions on the test, and in total they're worth over just 1% each. 48% of the test comes from those multiple choice. It's really important that you take those seriously. And then you can see that your short answers, which is what you're going to work on today, are worth 28%, so almost a third of the test. And then the essay and the news report are 12% each. So it's balanced in such a way that it's important that you give enough time and effort to all aspects of the test and really do your best. So let's take a look at how the test is marked. In total, the literacy test is out of 81 marks. For some reason, that's not how they report the score to you. I don't know why. But really, this is what it boils down to. And when we marked your practice tests in September, this is the format that we used. So you can see each multiple choice question is worth 1 mark for 39 marks total. The essay and the news report are 10 marks apiece. And then your short answer questions are 22 marks. If you're answering a short answer question that has to do with a reading, it's worth 3 marks. If you're reading something that's not about a reading, if you're writing something that's not about a reading, it's worth 5 marks. And that one's kind of marked the same way as the news report and essay. You get marks for your topic development as well as your ability to use conventions, proper spelling, and grammar in order to communicate clearly. Okay, so once you actually begin to take a look at some of the short answer questions, I want you to go APE for them. This is a strategy we talked about in the fall. Remember, the APE response, the APE method is to answer, prove, and explain your answer. So answer, this is answering the question. Use part of the question in your answer. It's an easy way to remember that. In your proof, this is where you're going to use specific details from the text. You want to get perhaps a quote. Remember, we talked about if you struggle to find details, it's a good idea to quote something directly from the text. There's nothing more specific than a quote. The last piece is where we kind of often struggle the most, I think, and that's in the explanation. Basically, what you need to do there is explain how your specific details support your answer. So draw the connection out between the evidence from the text and what you said. You're kind of making an inference here. So in other words, you're saying this shows, the evidence in the text shows that this is beneficial, or whatever the case may be. So all 3 components need to be there in order to get full marks. So here's a sample question. This is something that you might see. This would be an example of This is actually related to a reading, so it's a 3-mark question. It says, what does the schedule change show is a priority for the staff at the school? So there's an article about changing the schedule for school from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. start. So use specific details from the selection to support your answer. All of the short answer questions are worded similar to this. And now notice what I've done here. I've kind of highlighted or underlined some of the key details from here. Remember we talked about how there's 3 things you need to do when answering these types of questions: the answer, prove, and explain. And all the elements that I've underlined are the things that you need to do. You need to talk about the schedule change and what does it show as a priority. Then you have to find specific details from the selection, quote them, and put them in the answer, and then explain or support your answer. Explain how those 2 ideas are connected, and that'll complete the response. So one really good strategy is to go back to the text, go back to the article, and reread the sections that pertain to the question. So if you look here, this is a sample from the text, from the article itself. And it talks a little bit about some of the results that they saw with respect to changing the time. It says some schools that have experimented with later schedule report less student depression, fewer dropouts, better test scores, and higher grades. Well, that seems like a really nice, specific piece of evidence that I could use to create a response. So I might highlight that and use it in my response later. So here's what a sample response might look like. You can see I've kind of color-coded here the different components. So here's my answer. The change in schedule at the school shows that student learning is the priority for staff. And so I kind of gathered that from the piece that I just highlighted. The text says that schools with a later start time report higher grades, better test scores, and fewer dropouts. That's right from the text. That's the specific evidence they're looking for. And then the last piece, by changing the start time, staff at the school is trying to get higher grades for the school because students will be more rested and better able to learn. So that's how I kind of explain how these results show what the staff's priority is. Okay, so here's one more example of a question. This one is not related to a text, so it's one of the 5-mark answers. So again, I've highlighted the different components that you need to do, the 3 steps. Identify the ideal destination for a high school field trip. Explain your choice with specific details. So an ideal destination for a high school trip would be to Quebec City. So there's the answer. Here, students could observe a new culture and practice their French language skills while learning about Canada's history. So you can see they're kind of intermixing. They don't necessarily have to be in this specific order, but the pieces are there while learning about Canada's history. We got that last piece there. Furthermore, Quebec City is a provincial capital, so students can learn about and understand Canadian politics. So they're explaining again the specific details that show why it's important to travel, and perhaps why this school trip would be a good option. Okay, so that about wraps it up for today. So again, our goals for today were to talk about what to bring to the test, the types of things that you should do to prepare. And then we talked about the kinds of questions that you'll see on the test. Remember, there's a news report, an essay, short answer questions based on readings and independent of them. And of course, multiple choice. Remember, we talked about the weighting of those. Your multiple choice is 48% of the test, and your short answer at 28%. And then, of course, we talked about the answer, proof, explain strategy, the APE strategy for answering short answer questions. It's a good strategy to use, and I encourage all of you to do that today. If you're interested in seeing this video again, or any other video for that matter in the Literacy Prep series that has been created, go ahead to youtube.com, type in UCC Literacy, and you should see this come up. And you can see these videos were made by Mr. Broadbent originally, and he's allowed me to edit them for our purposes here today. So in these versions, you'll get all of that great wit and humor and the puns from Mr. Broadbent.